Chapter 1. The Man in Chains. The summer sun burned white over the frontier town, throwing long, wavering shadows across the dusty street. The auction block creaked under the weight of a man who looked more beast than prisoner. Shackles bit into his wrists, iron chains dragging heavy across the planks with each reluctant step. His hair was wild, sun-bleached at the ends, his beard rough, his eyes as sharp as a wolf's caught in a snare. Cole McCrae, mountain man, outlaw, survivor. The name hissed through the crowd like wind through sagebrush. Some spat at his boots. Others jeered, eager for the spectacle of the savage brought low. The auctioneer, sweat dripping beneath his wide-brimmed hat, raised his voice above the din. "Step right up, folks. Here's a real wild one for you. Survived 4 winters in the Rockies with nothing but a knife. Killed a man, maybe more, but he's strong. Aye, worth his weight if you've the stomach to tame him." Cole's jaw clenched, the chains rattling as he straightened, tall and unbowed. His gaze swept the crowd, daring anyone to meet it. Most looked away. All but one. Eleanor Hayes stood near the front, her parasol shading porcelain skin from the harsh sun. Dressed in mourning black, though her husband had been buried 2 years, she carried herself with a pride that made men stumble over their boots when she walked past. The widow of the Hayes Ranch, rich, untouchable, and whispered about in every saloon from here to Santa Fe. Now, her eyes lingered on the man in chains. The crowd's laughter roared as the bidding began. $5, 10, a few drunk cowhands hollering for sport. Eleanor lowered her parasol, letting the light strike her face, unflinching. Her voice rang out clear, carrying over the noise. $50. Silence fell like a shot fired in church. The auctioneer blinked, stammering. "Ma'am, a 50? She took a slow step forward, her gloved hand steady. Her gaze locked on Cole as though no one else existed. "I'll buy this savage," she said, each word deliberate, "and tame him." The crowd erupted, gasps, curses, the scrape of boots shifting on the boards. Men muttered that she'd lost her wits, that the widow had finally gone too far. Cole's lips curled, not quite a smile, more challenge. "You think you own me, lady?" His voice was low, gravel rasped with defiance. Eleanor met his stare, without a blink. "Not yet, but you'll find I don't scare easy." The sun dipped lower, casting the sky in shades of fire and dust. Somewhere beyond the town, a coyote howled. On that creaking block, in the heavy silence that followed, something dangerous sparked between the chained mountain man and the widow who had just claimed him. Chapter 2. A Gilded Cage. The wheels of the Hayes carriage ground over the dry, rutted road, raising clouds of red dust that clung to Cole's sweat-soaked skin. Shackled, his wrists raw, he sat in the back with 2 ranch hands watching him like hawks, rifles across their knees. The wide plains rolled out endless, golden under the dying sun. A hawk circled above, and Cole's eyes followed it. Hungry, yearning for the freedom it mocked him with, Eleanor sat across from him, upright and composed, her black dress as crisp as if she were heading to Sunday service, instead of dragging a man from chains to her home. The sway of the carriage did not move her. She seemed carved of stone. And yet, when Cole's gaze lingered on her, she looked back with something sharper than disdain. Curiosity, maybe, or calculation. The ranch rose on the horizon like a fortress of wealth. Sprawling corrals, a great barn, whitewashed fences stretching toward the river. Hands paused their work to gate as the carriage rolled in. Whispers followed, low and urgent. "Lord Almighty, she's gone and bought herself a savage. Crazy widow, he'll slit her throat before week's end. Or she'll break him like a horse." Cole caught every word, his lip curling. He'd been called worse, but the weight of so many eyes on him was its own kind of gallows. That night, they locked him in the stables. The air was thick with the musk of horses, lantern light flickering across the boards. Cole stretched against the chains, testing their strength, but found no give. A stallion snorted in the shadows, restless at his presence. The door creaked open. Eleanor stepped in, her skirts brushing hay, the faint scent of lilac rising above the stench of sweat and leather. She held a tray with bread, stew, and a tin cup of water. He narrowed his eyes. What game is this? Feed the beast so it fights another day? Her hand lingered on the tray before setting it down on the hay bale. You'll eat at my table tomorrow. Tonight, I want you to see you're not starving under my roof. He barked a laugh, sharp and bitter. Your roof? Lady, you can chain a wolf, but you can't make him lap from your dish. Eleanor didn't flinch. She stepped closer, enough that the lamplight caught the steel in her eyes. We'll see, she said quietly, steady as a drawn pistol. This place isn't your prison, Cole McCrae. It's a chance. What you do with it. Live like a man or rot like a savage, that's on you. She left him with a tray and the echo of her words. Cole stared after her, the clink of his chains loud in the silence. For the first time in years, it wasn't the wilderness testing his will. It was a woman. Chapter 3, The Saloon's Whisper. The Golden Spur Saloon was alive that night, lanterns glowing through smoky glass, piano notes clashing with the roar of voices and laughter. The floorboards creaked under boots spurred with dust, and the scent of whiskey, sweat, and gun oil hung thick in the air. News traveled fast in frontier towns, and by evening, every card table and whiskey glass carried the same tale. The widow Hayes had bought herself a savage. $50 for a wolf in chains, one man muttered, slamming his cards down. She's lost her damn mind. Another leaned in, voice thick with liquor. Mind? No, boys, that's hunger. Rich woman gets lonely out on that ranch. Laughter followed, sharp and dirty, rolling over the saloon like a storm. Eleanor heard the rumors before she even stepped through the swinging doors. She hadn't intended to show herself in town, not yet, but she would not let the whispers grow unchecked. Tonight, she walked in, black skirts trailing across the scarred floor, her parasol folded like a weapon at her side. The piano faltered, men turned, and for a moment the saloon held its breath. She moved to the bar, calm as a queen. Whiskey. Neat. It was then the gunslinger rose, a man with a red bandana tied loose at his throat, his spurs jangling as he swaggered into her path. He smelled of sweat and rock gut, his eyes narrowed to slits. Now what's this I hear, Miss Hayes? His grin was crooked, cruel. You gone and bought yourself a wild dog? Thinking to keep him as a pet, or something warmer? The room crackled with laughter. Eleanor didn't move, didn't blink. Best sit down, mister. My business is mine. The gunslinger tipped his hat mockingly. And the whole town's business when you drag a killer home. Folks will be lucky if he don't tear your throat in the night. Before Eleanor could reply, a voice cut through the noise, low, rough, but steady. He's got more chance, tearing yours. Every head turned. At the far end of the saloon, chained between two hired men, stood Cole McCrae. They brought him in to keep him close. But the mountain man wasn't cowed. Even bound, he stood like iron, his glare pinning the gunslinger where he stood. The laughter died. The gunslinger's smirk faltered. Eleanor's lips curved, just faintly, as she stepped past the man without another word. She paused only to glance at Cole, his eyes dark fire, his shoulders taut as though the chains barely held him. And for the first time, Eleanor wondered if she had brought home not a beast to tame, but a storm she would never control. Chapter 4, Gunfire at Sunset. The sun sagged low over the prairie, painting the sky in fire and dust. From Hayes' ranch porch, Eleanor watched the horizon, the air restless with the scent of sagebrush and horse sweat. Something in the silence prickled her nerves. Too quiet, too still. Even the coyotes held their tongues. Then came the thunder of hooves. Riders burst over the rise, black silhouettes against the burning sky. Guns gleamed in their fists. Cole had warned her of them. Men from his past, mountain wolves who'd once called him brother, now hungry for his blood. The ranch hands scattered to grab rifles, shouts echoing through the yard. Horses screamed in the corral, dust swirling like smoke. Eleanor's heartbeat pounded in her throat, but her voice cut sharp and steady. To arms, hold the gates. In the stable, Cole strained against his chains, his roar drowning the chaos. A ranch hand fumbled with the lock, shouting, "We can't hold him. He'll kill us if we set him free." Eleanor strode in, skirts whipping in the wind. Her hands trembled, but she held the key firm. Cole's eyes locked on hers, dark and blazing. "Lady, you unshackle me or you watch this place burn." For a heartbeat, she hesitated. To trust him was madness, but madness was already at her door. With a snap of iron, the chains clattered to the dirt. Cole rolled his shoulders, free at last, and snatched a rifle like it was born to his grip. "Stay behind me," he growled. Gunfire split the twilight. Bullets tore into the fences, boards splintering, glass shattering in the ranch house windows. Cole fired back, steady and cold. Every shot felling a rider. Eleanor ducked low beside him. The two of them pressed back to back at the barn door. Dust and gun smoke tangled in the air, the world lit by muzzle flashes and the setting sun. At one point, a bandit broke through the yard, revolver raised toward Eleanor. Cole spun, faster than her eyes could follow, and tackled the man into the dirt. Chains still clung to his ankles, but it didn't slow him. He slammed the rider's head into ground and fired the pistol point blank. When the last of them turned tail into the dusk, the ranch lay scarred. Fences shattered, horses trembling, the ground soaked with blood. Eleanor leaned against the barn post, breathless, her dress torn by a bullet's near miss. Cole stood nearby, chest heaving, his face grim but alive. His eyes met hers, no longer just wild but fierce with something else, something that rooted deep, dangerous as a gun in his hand. "You could have run," she whispered. He spat dust, shook his head. "I ain't running. Not from them. Not tonight." And in that crimson twilight, Eleanor realized she'd freed more than a man. She'd unleashed a force, one she could no longer tell if she feared or needed. Chapter 5, Taming the Heart. The ranch was quiet again, though the air still smelled of gunpowder and blood. A lantern burned low in Eleanor's parlor, its golden glow spilling across the wooden floorboards. Cole sat at the edge of a chair, shirt torn, shoulder bleeding from a graze that had nearly taken him down. He looked like a carved statue of the wilderness, battered, scarred, but unbreakable. Eleanor knelt beside him, her hand steady as she dabbed a cloth against the wound. His skin was hot beneath her touch, his muscles taut as a drawn bowstring. "You're lucky," she murmured, rinsing the cloth in a bowl of water. "An inch deeper and you'd be 6 feet under." Cole's mouth quirked into a humorless smile. "Luck don't follow me, lady. Just bullets and chains." She pressed the cloth firmer and he winced, though his eyes never left hers. "Then maybe you've been following the wrong trail," she said softly. The silence between them thickened, filled with the tick of the mantel clock and the distant wicker of horses outside. For years, Eleanor had told herself she was untouchable, hardened against the loneliness of her widowhood. Yet here she was, tending the wounds of a man the town swore was a savage, and finding her hands linger longer than they should. Cole shifted, his gaze dropping to her fingers brushing across his skin. "Why do this?" His voice was rough, uncertain, as if he didn't trust the answer. "Why risk yourself for me?" Her throat tightened, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. "Because I see more in you than chains, more than the stories they spit in the saloon." And because she paused, steadying her breath, because I'm tired of being the only one left at my own table. The words slipped into the space between them like a secret she could never take back. Cole's expression softened, the hardness in his jaw easing. He reached up slowly, his shackled hand brushing against hers. The roughness of his calloused fingers against her gloved one sent a shiver down her spine. I ain't a man easy to keep, he warned, voice low, almost a growl. I've been broken, lied to, hunted. And yet you stayed, she whispered, her eyes shining in the lantern light. When you could have run, you stayed. The closeness between them swelled, a fragile, dangerous thing. For a heartbeat, the world outside ceased to exist. The dust, the danger, the whispers of the town. All that remained was the widow and the mountain man, bound not by chains, but by something far more impossible to break. Chapter 6. The Savage and the Lady. Morning came slow over the plains, a pale gold breaking across the horizon. Dust still clung to the ranch and the fight the night before, but Eleanor stood tall in her riding dress, her chin lifted as the town gathered at her gates. Men with rifles, wives with whispers, the sheriff with his badge shining like judgment in the early light. They'd come not for her, but for him. Cole stood beside her, wrists bare chains for the first time since the auction. His shoulders squared, his jaw set, though his eyes flicked to her as if waiting for the noose to fall. Mrs. Hayes, the sheriff called, resting his hand on the butt of his revolver. You've sheltered a criminal. The town won't stand for it. Hand him over, and no harm comes to you. The crowd stirred, boots grinding the dust, voices rising. Savage. Murderer. Dangerous. Eleanor's heart hammered, but her voice rang clear, strong enough to slice through the noise. This man saved my life. Saved this ranch. You call him a savage, yet he fought harder for us than half of you standing here. If you want him, you'll take him over my dead body. Eleanor's heart hammered, but her voice rang clear, strong enough to slice through the noise. This man saved my life. Saved this ranch. You call him a savage, yet he fought harder for us than half of you standing here. If you want him, you'll take him over my dead body. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The sheriff shifted, uncertainty flashing in his eyes. Cole's breath caught, his stare burning into her, as if the words had struck deeper than any bullet. Eleanor, he murmured, so low only she could hear. You don't have to do this. She turned to him, the morning sun catching in her dark eyes. Yes, I do, because I see you, Cole McCrae, and I won't let them cage what I've already set free. The sheriff, faced with her defiance and a row of rifles still manned by her loyal ranch hands, hesitated. At last, with a curse muttered under his breath, he lifted his hat. So be it, but the town be watching. If he proves you wrong, it's on your head. The crowd slowly broke apart, their whispers trailing into the rising heat. Dust settled. Silence returned. Cole turned to her, his voice rough, uneven. You risked everything for me. She stepped closer, her gloved hand resting lightly against his chest, where his heart still pounded wild as a stallion. I thought I bought you, Cole. Thought I could tame you. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. But it was never you I wanted to tame. It was my own heart. His hand came up, strong and calloused, closing gently around hers. For the first time since she'd seen him in chains, his eyes softened. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the ranch. And there, in the dust and light of a new day, the savage and the lady sealed their fate with a kiss. Fierce, unyielding, and born of fire. The sun dipped low, bleeding fire across the wide horizon, the sky painted in gold and crimson. Dust swirled in the cooling wind, carrying the faint scent of sagebrush and the distant notes of a saloon piano drifting from town. Horses grazed in the corral, their silhouettes dark against the glow. as if the world itself exhaled after the storm. Eleanor stood on the ranch porch, skirts brushing the wood, her gaze fixed on the horizon where so much had been lost and won. Cole approached in the stables, no longer shackled, no longer the man in chains. The wilderness still clung to him, but now it mingled with something steadier, anchored by her presence. They stopped close, the space between them filled with all the words unspoken until now. Cole's voice was rough, but sure. You freed me, Eleanor, not just from iron, from the kind of life where a man belongs to nothing. Her hand reached for his, trembling yet certain. And you gave me back something I thought I'd buried, hope. For a long heartbeat, silence reigned, broken only by the cry of a lone coyote across the plains. Then Cole bent, his lips brushing hers. A kiss bore fire and dust in all the battles they'd survived. When they parted, he whispered against her skin, "Reckon we both tamed something wild." And beneath that blazing western sky, they turned together toward the endless frontier,